Breakup phases. Everyone copes with a breakup in their own way. However, it is possible to describe 7 common breakup phases that you might go through. The key word here is might. Not everyone experiences all the phases, nor do they necessarily follow the order described. It always depends on an individual's past experiences, emotional intelligence, and whether the breakup was a mutual decision or the choice of just one partner. Breakup phases. Different for men and women. It's not just women who go through breakup phases. Men do as well. Despite the common belief that men lack emotions and are unaffected by breakups, they too must process the end of a relationship. However, the way they cope often differs, meaning that men and women may behave differently in each phase. We'll take a closer look at how these phases unfold for both genders in the following paragraphs. The duration of each breakup phase varies greatly. Some people breeze through them quickly, barely stopping at each stage, while for others, a breakup can be an incredibly painful experience that takes months, or in rare cases, even years, to heal from. Breakup. Phase 1. Shock. What the hell just happened? The initial reaction to a breakup is often shock. This is a natural response of the body to pain, whether physical or emotional. At this stage, it's hard to believe that it's really happening, that the person we love is actually leaving us. Shock may manifest as sudden weakness, difficulty breathing, or trouble sleeping. This phase can last just a few minutes, but if the breakup came completely out of the blue, it can stretch on for several weeks. For men, the first phase of a breakup often brings their suppressed ego to the surface. In relationships, their ego tends to be subdued, but in the wake of a breakup, it resurfaces strongly. As a result, men may appear completely fine, like the breakup hasn't shaken them at all, and they are fully embracing their newfound freedom. However, this is often just a mask, a defense mechanism to cope with the initial shock. Beneath the surface, most of them are silently but deeply suffering. Breakup. Phase 2. Denial. This can't be real. After the initial shock comes a phase of disbelief and stubborn denial. We refuse to accept that the breakup has actually happened. We try to convince ourselves that it was just a mistake or a cruel joke, and that our loved one will soon come back, making everything as perfect as it once was. In this phase, we avoid facing reality, the fact that our relationship is over, because the pain is simply too overwhelming. In the second phase of a breakup, men often become highly social, even those who previously preferred a more introverted lifestyle during the relationship. Unlike women, men tend to suppress their emotions at this stage, pushing them aside instead of confronting them. They act as if nothing has happened, throwing themselves into social gatherings and distractions. This can be deeply hurtful for their ex-partner. Did he ever truly care if, just days after the breakup, he's partying non-stop or even seeing someone new? But for men, this behavior is not a sign that they have already moved on. Rather, it's their way of restoring damaged self-confidence and numbing the pain of the breakup. Seeking out new relationships, whether casual or serious, is another way for men to fill the emotional void left behind. Social interactions, including texting and calling, were a daily part of their routine, and now that's suddenly gone. Finding new connections becomes a coping mechanism to replace what they've lost. Women, on the other hand, don't struggle with ego in the same way men do, so their second phase is often defined by denial of reality. They wait by their phones, expecting a message from their ex, one that will surely say it was all a mistake, that he still loves them, and that he wants to come back. In the first weeks after a breakup, women tend to scroll through old photos, reread past messages, and cling to the hope that a reconciliation is just around the corner. Women also experience the initial shock of a breakup differently than men. The overwhelming pain can leave them feeling completely paralyzed, unable to function normally. They struggle to understand how the person they shared their life with just yesterday is suddenly gone, and they can't accept that it's really over. This phase is often accompanied by deep loneliness, vulnerability, and a profound sense of uncertainty. Breakup. Phase 3. Withdrawal. I'd rather be alone right now. Once we accept the fact that our loved one has left us, we can finally start processing the breakup. We replay key moments of the failed relationship in our minds, searching for the exact point when things began to fall apart. Most people retreat inward during this phase. We avoid going outside, minimize contact with others, and prefer isolation over social interactions. Even men, who may have initially thrown themselves into work, social events, or new activities, start facing reality at this stage. This is the first and crucial step toward healing. However, for men, acknowledging their vulnerability and loneliness is a difficult pill to swallow, as it directly challenges their ego. Women, despite being more open about their emotions than men, also seek solitude in this phase. They withdraw from family and friends, finding it easier to stay locked inside with a box of tissues and a tub of ice cream than to face people, conversations, and the painful truth that the relationship is truly over. As tempting as it may seem, women should be careful not to sink too deep into self-pity. In this phase, it is important to push themselves to socialize, even if just a little, as often as possible. Breakup. Phase 4. Anger and rage. I hate you, you broke my heart. As we continue processing the breakup, sadness gradually transforms into anger. This anger can take many forms. Rage toward the ex-partner for everything they put us through, including the breakup itself, frustration with ourselves for not seeing the signs earlier, or guilt for failing to prevent or fix the issues in time. We desperately seek someone to blame. Sometimes it's the ex, sometimes it's us, and often it's both. For men, reality starts hitting in the previous phase, but this fourth stage is when they begin asking deeper questions. Why did we break up? Who's at fault? It's a phase filled with both anger and sadness, emotions that men have likely been suppressing until now. Letting these feelings out is a necessary and healthy part of the healing process. While men usually prefer to deal with emotions in private and don't share as openly as women, this stage marks the beginning of their gradual acceptance that the relationship is truly over. Women in this phase: anger and vulnerability. At this stage, women also begin to fully accept that the breakup is final. They suffer and rage, resenting their ex for his selfishness and for leaving them behind. This phase, in which women feel extremely vulnerable, is often accompanied by self-doubt and a deep fear of the future. Hatred frequently surfaces. They wish their ex nothing but the worse, blaming him entirely for the terrible and hopeless situation they now find themselves in. Breakup. Phase 5. Bargaining. What can I do to get them back? This phase is not just about trying to win the other person back. It's also about attempting to free ourselves from guilt. Desperately, we negotiate with our ex or with ourselves, trying to understand what we did wrong and what we must do now to make them return. Outwardly, we focus on fixing our mistakes and changing ourselves, but deep down, this phase is really about escaping the overwhelming pain that has paralyzed us since the breakup. At this point, it feels similar to withdrawal from an addiction, like drugs or alcohol. We desperately crave what we lost, our partner. Yet deep down, we may already realize that going back wouldn't truly be for the best in the long run. For men, this phase is a time of reflection. They've already gained some awareness, perhaps even recognized their own mistakes and want to fix them. Many men reach out to their exes at this stage. They meet up, sometimes even rekindle intimacy, and attempt to revive the relationship. If reconciliation fails, which it usually does, full acceptance of the breakup is within reach. The man now feels he has done everything possible and understands that it's time to move on. For women, anger often shifts into guilt during this phase. Their perspective flips entirely. They start believing that the breakup was entirely their fault. Their minds fill with what-if thoughts. What if I hadn't yelled at him back then? Would things be different today? This, too, is a coping mechanism to deal with the painful situation. Some women prefer to live in nostalgic memories of the past rather than face the discomfort of the present. Breakup. Phase 6. Depression. I will never get them back. At this stage, we start realizing the true extent of our loss. We fear that our life will never be as happy as it once was, that we'll never find someone new, and that we'll be alone forever. The deep sadness can sometimes evolve into mild depression, making even the simplest tasks, like getting out of bed in the morning, feel unbearable and overwhelming task. The feelings of hopelessness can even manifest physically, which is not uncommon. Simple daily tasks may seem impossible, and deep emotional pain might be accompanied by physical symptoms. For men, this phase marks a turning point. They begin to regain confidence in themselves and in others, particularly women. They reassess their desires and needs and slowly re-enter the dating world. They become increasingly certain that they can live without their ex, and that happiness is still within reach, perhaps even more so than before. However, rebuilding self-confidence and trust takes time, requiring patience and self-compassion. Women in this phase tend to withdraw further into themselves. They avoid social interactions and struggle to see any light at the end of the tunnel. They know the relationship cannot be saved, yet they refuse to believe that they could ever be happy again. This emotional distress often takes a physical toll, leading to insomnia, anxiety, and even disordered eating in some cases. Breakup. Phase 7. Acceptance. Rediscovering oneself. The final phase of a breakup is defined by acceptance. We have finally come to terms with reality. Our relationship is over. We understand why we were with our ex, but we also fully grasp why we are no longer together. Most importantly, we have reached the conclusion that we can and will be happy without them. After the pain of heartbreak, we start to feel like ourselves again, and we know that from here on out, things will only get better. For men, this phase signifies the completion of their emotional recovery. They have processed their feelings, answered their lingering questions, and are now ready to embrace new relationships, or not. Some men, after going through all the breakup stages, realize they are content on their own and choose to remain single for weeks, months, or even years before pursuing another relationship. As anger, guilt, and depression subside, women also enter a much more positive phase. Their minds grow calmer, and hope for a brighter future begins to take root. They slowly but surely start piecing their broken hearts back together, preparing themselves for whatever life has in store. Just like men, they may choose to dive into a new relationship, or they might prefer to remain happily single until the right person comes along. Healing properly leads to a brighter future. The breakup phases experienced by both men and women are not just arbitrary psychological constructs. They are deeply rooted in extensive research on human behavior. Moving through these stages honestly, patiently, and without rushing is crucial for true emotional healing. Those who allow themselves to fully process their breakup are far more likely to emerge not just alive and well, but also free from emotional scars that could negatively impact their future relationships.